How's everybody doing? Welcome to Inside the Cage. I'm your host, Terrell Campbell. And with me, as always, well, the man to my right, Jerome Spann.
Yes, sir.
And the man to my left, Jeff Fanning. And we like to give you guys the best possible show possible, and that is talking about MMA and pro wrestling. All right? So, around the time the show is going to air, we're going to be coming off of UFC 184. But we're going to talk about something a little bit different this week, okay? We're going to talk about a promotion that gets very little of our attention, and that's Bellator MMA. Now, granted, they're the number 2 company in MMA, but, they've made some questionable calls. With Rampage Jackson leaving the company and a lot of things recently. But they made a big signing in Kimbo Slice about a month ago. But now Kimbo Slice is scheduled to face a UFC Hall of Famer that he was supposed to fight years ago in Ken Shamrock. So let me go ahead and get the opinions of Jerome and Jeff. Guys, what do you think is the big issue with Kimbo versus Ken Shamrock?
Well, to start, I wonder if this fight is more of a money grab or if it's really about them trying to promote their company better and try to advance some lesser known fighters. Because honestly, what it comes down to is Kimbo Slice. He was popular 5-6 years ago. Okay, when he had all the internet videos where he was knocking guys out. Great boxer. I mean, nobody really wants to stand with a guy in box. But this is MMA, and then we already know what his weaknesses are. We already know that he doesn't really have a ground game. I mean, hopefully he's worked on it and at least developed the ability to stop a takedown, and when he gets taken down, to get off of his back, because that was the primary problem that he had when he was in UFC and when he went through the Ultimate Fighter, was that the fact of the matter, he couldn't get off of his back. If he got taken down, it was over with. That's why Roy Big Country Nelson beat him the way that he did. It was simply because he couldn't get off of his back. So, with that in mind, you then see his opponent in Ken Shamrock, a guy who, by all means, is probably washed up as a fighter, probably done as a fighter, but he still has the ability and the knowledge to take you down and be able to grind a fight out with a guy who doesn't really have the experience on the ground to defend himself. So, it gives me the pause to wonder if Kimbo Slice is really going to even do anything relevant in this fight, because of the fact of the matter that, hey, he doesn't really have a great MMA skill base. So I feel like this fight is just a money grab at the end of the day. I don't feel like it's anything that's really great for the company or great for the sport of MMA. I think it's just a company trying to get money while they still can.
Honestly, when it comes down to it, I think that when it comes to Ken Shamrock, even though he's, like you said, he is so much of a washed-up MMA fighter, I mean, he even said himself that he still has plenty of fights left in him at 51 years old. So, I mean, we'll see what comes of it. But honestly, Kimbo Slice to me is just another YouTube wannabe. Because honestly, yeah, he made a great deal for himself, through YouTube. But once you actually get him in the octagon, you realize how pathetic of an actual fighter he really becomes. It'll be very interesting to see how quickly this match actually goes, because of the fact that if, like you said, if with Kimbo Slice not having a ground game, Ken Shamrock's pretty much going to ground and pound him until he's done. And I don't see it being as much of a good dream fight like we all think it's going to be.
For me, it's not a fight of interest, just because it's like, hey, both of these guys, they're past their prime. Both of them. And Ken Shamrock, I give him credit. Yes, you say you still have fights in you, but that's why they use the old expression in sports to where the greats always have to be dragged off. They don't walk off. That's just the way that it goes. They always believe that they still got something left. And hey, I'm not faulting anybody for getting the money. Both of you get your money, but I'm just simply saying this is a money grab. On both ends. Both ends.
Jerome, you might be absolutely right. This could be a big money grab. And, I mean, that old expression, the greats don't walk off, they get dragged off. That sums it up pretty much for almost any fighter, almost any entertainer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a break. But when we get back, we're going to talk about, get this, the biggest money fight in boxing. So don't go anywhere, and I want you to stay locked inside the cage, right here on YouTube. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside the Cage. I'm your host, Terrell Campbell. With me, as always, is Jerome Spann and Jeff Fanning. And, ladies and gentlemen, it was announced recently, and we've got to comment on it, okay? The biggest money fight in boxing is happening. We're getting Floyd Money Mayweather versus Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. Now, I know a lot of people have their thoughts on this one, so I want you to make sure you tweet to us at Inside the Cage TC on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Let us know what you think. But in the meantime, Jerome, Jeff, what do you two have to say about this fight?
This is a fight we've all been waiting for. I know weeks ago on our radio show I said I was not excited for the possibility of this fight anymore. Well, I gotta kind of call myself a liar, because at the end of the day, when the fight got announced, when Floyd tweeted out and said that it was finally going to happen, there was actually a lot of pent-up excitement in me that said, hey, this is going to be awesome. And I think a big part of it has to do with the fact that we've waited, 4 or 5 years for this fight to happen, when they've been saying, oh, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it kind of got to be the running joke in the sports community, where it was like, oh, kind of like how they would talk about how like Patrick Ewing was never going to win a championship and stuff like that, and like, ha ha ha, when is PU going to win? Or, that's what it became, was when are Pacquiao and Mayweather going to fight? The answer was always never. But now it is finally happening, and I'm thoroughly excited. Now, I do wonder what both men have left in the tank, especially Pacquiao. Coming off of what Marquez did to him, that is going to change you as a fighter. Any fighter that's been knocked out like that will tell you, once you are knocked out like that, it changes who you are as a fighter. So it makes me wonder if Manny's going to be able to present the same challenge that he would have 3, 4, 5 years ago. Still think it's going to be a highly enjoyable fight, because we know Pacquiao's going to come out and try and bring the fight to Mayweather, and that's what Mayweather wants. He's a counterpuncher. So we should see some extreme fisticuffs, and it should be very, very enjoyable. I just want to say thank you for finally doing this, but it should have been done years ago. And after this, there's not another great boxing fight left. Nobody cares anymore. I hate to say that, because I grew up watching boxing and I love the sport, but this is like that last, requiem to boxing. This is it. This is the wake, and the funeral will be after the fight happens. That's my opinion, at least.
No, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to the fact that this could be the fight of probably the millennia when it comes to Pacquiao and Mayweather. And all I would say, it's about time. We needed this fight a long time ago. I'm glad it's finally happening, because honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing the fact that Pacquiao knock out Mayweather and finally shut him up. That's my biggest thing. I want to see him shut up, because the fact that he said, oh, I'm the greatest of all time, I'm the greatest of all time, I can't, nobody can beat me. I'm just waiting to see him lose just to shut up. And the biggest thing is, I believe you're right, though. This is going to be the last big match, because the fact that aside from them, you figure, who was the last time you heard from a De La Hoya or, any of the other big names in boxing? You haven't, because the fact that, they're all gone. And maybe there'll still be a little bit more people that are in there that are still boxing. That's great. But you're never going to see the big names like a Pacquiao, Mayweather, a De La Hoya, a Holyfield, any of those guys ever again. And I don't think we're ever going to have a big match like this probably ever again. And, with this being said, boxing, see ya. MMA is going to be basically the new boxing, and we'll never see a fight like this ever again.
There's no more superstars left in the sport, and when you are a sport that is based off of individual superstars as your draw, and you don't have any left, your business model no longer works. Plain out and simple.
All right, well, you know what, guys? Hey, I think you're both right. This is the last big money fight that there is in boxing. There's no more stars. Nobody can name the title holders. I think Vitaly or Vladimir Klitschko is the heavyweight champion. So that tells you right there that there is no big stars left in boxing, and since you can't name the champions, how can you want to see the challengers? All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a break, but when we get back, it's time for us to go to war. Fantasy Warfare coming up with Bruiser Brody versus the madman himself, Luke Harper. So don't go anywhere and stay locked inside the cage. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Inside the Cage. I'm Terrell Campbell. With me are my co-hosts, Jerome Spann and Jeff Fanning. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time that we do one of our favorite segments on this show, and it is time that we go to war. That's right, Fantasy Warfare. And this week, we're gonna take the original madman, Bruiser Brody, versus pretty much his 21st century carbon copy, Luke Harper. So, gentlemen, who's got the Bruiser? All right. Well, you know what? We're going to go with the new school first. So, Jerome, you're going to go ahead and give us your point on Luke Harper.
Now, the reason I chose to stand up for this man is because I feel like he has the ability to become one of the legendary, like, spooky great guys. You know, being the real creepy guy, along with the likes of like a Bray Wyatt. I have faith in him. He's been in the business really as a professional since, I want to say, '03, okay? He's had a couple different iterations. At one time he was known as like Brody Joers, I believe is what they called him. But, you know, it's kind of the takeoff of Bruiser Brody, obviously. Well, in his time, he's only gotten better as a wrestler. I've watched some of his earlier matches on YouTube before he was even in WWE, and you know, you could see he was a little rough. He was going through his bumps and bruises, but he's evolved as a wrestler. He was not very compelling in the beginning of his, wrestling career. He really didn't have that it factor that really made you want to watch him. But as his character grew, especially now into the man that he is now in Luke Harper, it's like you have something there. It's like he evokes emotion out of you that you normally don't feel for every wrestler. Like you look at Luke Harper and you're like, man, I really wouldn't want to mess with you, and you look like you haven't showered in like 2 weeks, so I really don't want you to touch me. You know, and like you just look at him and he fits this what your mind would build as the most hillbilly, dirty, scummy guy that you could ever see. That's what you get in Luke Harper. And he plays the role perfectly. And on top of that, he's actually a very skilled wrestler in the ring now. He doesn't put guys' safety at risk or anything like that. He's also, very good about that. But more to his character, since he's broken away from Bray Wyatt, all his characters continue to do is grow and grow and grow. He continues to keep filling his own shoes up more and more to a point to where WWE is going to have multiple villains that are almost going to be of legendary status, and they're not going to know what to do with it, because Bray Wyatt and like Luke Harper, they are guys that will be mainstays as villains for many years to come. He may not have had his championship success yet, but his day is coming, and it is coming fast.
To Bruiser Brody, you gotta remember, he is the original brawler. If it wasn't for Bruiser Brody, we wouldn't have brawlers like a Luke Harper or like any of the guys that we've seen over the years. This is a guy that made his transition from the NFL into the wrestling world, and he didn't need to have that worldwide fame for being a WWE superstar to actually get his name out there. I mean, he was just a regional wrestling guy that would face guys like Abdullah the Butcher, Tony Atlas. That's just to name a few. And he would come in that smash mouth style and and he had one goal in mind, just to destroy his opponent. And you didn't need to have any real skill. I mean, he didn't have to really craft his skill because of the fact that no matter where he was, what territory he went into, he was the guy that was absolutely feared. They didn't have to go through and, say, oh, well, he's nothing. No, his name got around the territories in the NWA and AWA and Mid-South, everywhere. And they're like, and people were like, I have to fight him? Why? People didn't want to fight him because of the fact that he was the kind of guy that they knew was going to come in and have one purpose and destroy them. It was going to be pretty much a squash match for them. I mean, this is a guy that, regardless of what you see, I mean, especially regardless of how his untimely death was, he was the kind of person that no matter what, you were going to see a great match and you're just going to have a great time watching this guy destroy some of the greats.
All right. Good point, Jerome. Good point, Jeff. We'll definitely see who wins out in this fantasy warfare. And fans, go ahead and go to Twitter on Inside the Cage TC on Twitter. Go ahead and use the hashtag LockedIn and hashtag Bruiser, hashtag Harper to cast your vote for who do you believe had the better argument. Now, when we come back, it is time to talk about the man who calls himself the Eater of Worlds, Bray Wyatt, and his challenge to The Undertaker for WrestleMania. So don't go anywhere and stay locked inside the cage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Inside the Cage. I'm your host, Terrell Campbell. With me, as always, is Jerome Spann and Jeff Fanning. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time that we talk about something that happened at Fastlane, where we saw, the familiar sights of druids with torches, and then we heard the gong hit, and then we saw the casket wheel down, and when the casket was open, we all thought it was going to be the dead man, the Phenom himself, and it was Bray Wyatt. And Bray Wyatt, although for the past few weeks has been giving us some of the most eerily creepy and promos that he's given us in the past few months, he's finally admitted that he wants The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And I've got to ask you guys, how do you feel about Bray versus Taker at Mania?
Well, to start with, I would have to say, to be fair, this isn't a match that I wanted. So let me preface all my statements by saying that I really would have preferred to have seen Bray Wyatt in a feud with somebody where it actually means something towards the future of the business. With that being said, though, it should be an interesting feud, in a sense, I guess. I'm trying not to be negative about it. I'm trying not to, but the problem is that this goes back to one of my biggest issues that I keep addressing over and over and over with WWE. What is your long-term goal? What exactly are you trying to do? Because my thing is yes, who doesn't, we've all enjoyed watching The Undertaker wrestle at WrestleMania for years and years and years. But what does the streak and what does an Undertaker WrestleMania match mean now without the streak? What purpose does it really have besides stealing a spot in a match from somebody that has worked for it all year long? I don't quite understand what the whole purpose is. It's like, all right, we all know they're not going to have The Undertaker drop another match now at WrestleMania. That's not going to happen. So what exactly are you doing to help Bray Wyatt out in this situation? Where is his benefit? Yeah, this is probably that match for The Undertaker to be able to say, okay, see, my last match at WrestleMania wasn't a loss. But what does it do for Bray Wyatt? How does it build his legend? Because he's the guy who's going to be in your company for the next 10 years. The Undertaker is going to be gone. So what is the purpose of this match? Now, will it probably be aesthetically pleasing? Yes, because they both are very great wrestlers. They know how to wrestle. They know how to put together matches. But once again, I go back to my question to them, the same question all the time. What is your long-term goal? What is it? How is this moment benefiting anyone but The Undertaker?
Well, when it comes to this whole match, biggest thing is, will Undertaker even accept the match? He has nothing left to prove. I mean, yes, he did lose the streak. Yes, he is, but he is still a legend when it comes to WrestleMania. He is still a legend in the eyes of all of the WWE universe. I mean, regardless of what goes on, he doesn't need this match to secure his legacy. And quite frankly, because of the fact that it's been a year since we've seen hide in hair of the dead man, what's going to happen? I mean, they need to actually have a feud where it's going to spill over to the next show. And unless I hear the gong when I go to Chicago for Extreme Rules, it's not going to really mean much.
So you're seeing what I mean. It's what is the purpose? Where's your ultimate goal? All your other matches at WrestleMania, they're going somewhere. Mm-hmm. All those guys, everybody's going somewhere. There's some type of progression to a story that they're trying to tell you, or just a progression in that character, just like he finally achieved something. What is anyone achieving besides, oh, well, there was a really bad taste in the fans' mouth from The Undertaker losing to Brock Lesnar, so let's just give him one last win. Like, what does that achieve?
Well, if that's the case, then why couldn't we have Sting Undertaker? Because that was a match that we actually wanted to see. We didn't want to see, not many people really wanted to see Lesnar Undertaker. A lot of people, or if we had this instead of doing John Cena, Bray Wyatt last year, we could have had Bray Wyatt Undertaker. We could have had that last year.
Exactly.
Extend the streak, and then you could end it this year, or then you could say, have him just say, screw it, I retire, and just leave it undefeated. Which they should have done a long time ago. When he was 20-0, they should have actually said, okay, he's got 20 straight wins. Leave it at that. Retire him. Not even go to, to get a loss.
I have to disagree with you on that point just because he should have lost, but it should have been a significant moment for someone's career. It should have been like, okay, let's just throw Dolph Ziggler out there because I'm a big Ziggler advocate. Okay. Yes, he hasn't, he doesn't always get put in the world title pictures and stuff like that. But if he has that moment to live on, if he has that moment to go on, he's got a leg to stand on. Instead, you gave it to a guy in Brock Lesnar who didn't need another moment. This guy already beat The Rock for the WWE title. What more does he need? That's where I just didn't understand it, and to where I go back to last year's WrestleMania, and this is why I was so infuriated then, because there was no long-term goal to benefit anyone but just Brock Lesnar. Because that's the only person that did. It mucked up everything else for everyone else. It benefited him in the sense to say he got another notch on his belt that he didn't even need. He could have still been this same beast Brock Lesnar that they're trying to sell him as with just doing what he did to John Cena. He did not need the streak in order to make him seem like this big beast now.
All right. And you know what, guys? Those are some great points you're making, and to furthermore on my own point with the Bray Wyatt Undertaker thing, you got to factor in that, Wyatt is still a young up-and-coming guy. He does, they did give the streak to Lesnar, which that's a sad thing because that could have been a great opportunity for Bray Wyatt. But what I'm most excited for is the build-up for this match. I think this will be a pretty good build-up with the psychological aspect of Bray Wyatt. Maybe Undertaker pops up behind him while he's doing one of his promos, and it's just like, rest in peace. Maybe, we don't see Undertaker until WrestleMania, and Bray Wyatt's calling him out. Then all of a sudden we hear that gong, and it's match time. But in the grand scheme of things, I believe that Jerome, you're 100% right that the streak should have went to someone more deserving. But I can also stand where they were saying that because as you wanted to go to somebody who you think if you saw them fighting Undertaker on the street that they would win.
But what does that matter in the wrestling business? These are the same people that gave Rey Mysterio championships. So don't all of a sudden try and change what your mentality's been in your business for like 20 years now.
And the same people that also got Rey Mysterio off to you too.
Yes, that's true. But my point is, they still gave him the moment. They didn't let size determine his moment. They didn't let this. Oh, well, he may look like this. Listen, anybody can knock out anybody on the street. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. Anybody can knock out anybody. So for them to have that type of mentality, it just doesn't work. It just does not work for me. And that's why I say they didn't have any long-term vision when they did this last year. And now we're at this point to where last year, if they gave us this match, man, I would have been jacked. Man, I would have been excited. I would have been like, man, this would maybe be my favorite match on the card. But they didn't give it to us last year. They're giving it to us now.
By the way, you know you're not recording, right?
I know, I just always get excited. I get excited.
All right. Well, with that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and say adieu. But make sure that you go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Inside the Cage TC. And also, as you can see at the bottom of your screens, underneath our names, you can follow us at our own individual Twitters. So make sure that you go ahead, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. And, well, for lack of better terms, everybody, make sure that you remember the name.